too. Speaking of curriculum in school, Project Veritas, who I think we all love on this show anyway, they do great work. Basically undercover journalism. If you don't know Project Veritas, I think most people do, especially if you listen to this radio station, you're probably familiar with their works. And James O'Keefe, the guy that kind of heads it up. Well, here in Georgia, they had what do you call that? A sting operation? What do you call that when they corner somebody up and have them spilling their guts on camera?
I mean, it's definitely investigative journalism at that point, but yeah, kind of a sting operation at the same time.
Yeah, they had some interesting.
They got him.
They
must have got a good-looking dude, huh?
Man.
Usually they find the good-looking girl. This time it seemed like they found a good-looking dude to go out on a few dates.
Yeah, well, it was interesting the way it all came down. And I actually listened to a Twitter Spaces for about an hour on it last night. But Project Veritas basically uncovered how CRT is being used at least two school systems here in Georgia. That would be Fulton County and Cobb County. And the guy's name is Quintin Bostic, the so-called sting. The person that they ran the sting on, the investigative journalism that they did, worked for a company called Teaching Labs. And I wonder if this guy will be held accountable, or does this just go away? How is this guy real? Is he saying real things, or is he just talking out his butt trying to, be a tough guy? But he basically says, and we'll go to cut one here, that as long as you don't call it CRT, you can use CRT in the classroom, and that's what his company, Teaching Labs, does.
If you don't say the word for the grace period, you can technically teach it. And it's amazing how you've gotten the schools to purchase a curriculum and they don't even know what's going on. I wish I'm a good salesman, but I'm also an evil salesman. Like, so bad.
I'm a good salesman. I'm also an evil salesman. Boy, howdy. You summarized that well, sir.
He sure did, yeah. I would say I'm a good salesman, but I'm also an evil salesman. I mean, why would you even admit that your product is evil if there's nothing wrong with your product,
That's
right? I mean,
point.
Obviously he is doing something that is against, morality is the best way to say it. Because
against Georgia law, too, right?
Yeah, and he called it evil. So obviously what he's talking about is critical race theory and getting it, because it is banned in schools, getting it through to certain teachers that bought these curriculums through the teaching lab. But he admits right then and there that this is an evil, evil system.
Well, it's an element of socialism, ultimately, is what it becomes, and what it teaches and what it instructs your kids to believe. And to start with, that if you are white, you are lesser, and then it goes from there, and it just builds. And it's part of creating that mentality by which they will then be spoon-fed a whole bunch of stuff that is just straight, it's just BS. I've said this for a long time, and now, because my kids are in it, every now and then when we have to go home and have elements of Common Core math, you realize that people will create things that they can sell to school districts. And the fact that you can't just say what 3 times 3 is, you have to write it all out, show all your work, do all the Common Core stuff. It's silliness. And so this is just like the next standard, but again, based in socialism.
Quintin Bostic and the folks at Teaching Labs, Project Veritas is saying they've taken all the people off the website. I went to the website. I did not see the removal of all of their staff. Not to say that that's not coming, but they're reporting that this morning and even last night. And I went to the website both times and could see this guy and the rest of their staff. But regardless, it makes you wonder how many people are like him, how many other companies are like this that exist in America. Because, Los, you bring up such a great point. People see the opportunity to sell to school systems, and organizations do, because it's an endless supply of money. There's always money there. So as long as we can keep selling them things, they keep buying it. It's money in our pocket. So how many of these are out there?
Well, imagine this. You can get access to tax dollars as a private company by selling stuff that actually does not do good for society. I mean, that's the crazy part about all of this stuff, and that's why when parents start to get, basically, neck deep into this stuff, and they start reading into what's being taught to your kids, they go, I don't like that. Like that doesn't make any sense. I don't want to have this being indoctrinated into my children, and to realize, by the way, your tax dollars what bought it in order to give it to your kids.
Yeah, it is a sick way of getting your ideology through, because what they want to do is they want to get it to the youngest possible level, because they know, and I've said it before, kids are sponges. Whatever a teacher tells them, they're going to look at that authority figure and listen to them and then go back home. And that's the point of this. What they want is, and what Dr. Bostic and the people at this teaching lab want, are kids to go home and challenge their parents and say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. 3 times 3 equals white supremacy. That's what this answer is. That's what they really want out of this. And the teaching lab is not just here in Georgia, by the way.
No,
this
24
is
states.
Yeah, 24 different states. So this is going on throughout all of those states, and that they are pushing it in. So every time you hear, this school is now has a DEI program, you can pretty much assume that it's also critical race theory that is being taught to kindergartners.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, and here's the main thing to ponder. Critical race theory always teaches that racism is not an individual aspect. It is not something that you have, or that your dad has, or that your mom has, that it's embedded throughout all of society, throughout the legal system and its policies. The problem is, ultimately what it does is it takes just the idea of bias, and it takes it out of your hands and just says, well, it's part of everything, and so you're automatically it, even if there's not one little part of you that grew up with any kind of bias or prejudice towards other people. Yet they're teaching that you are part of that system, and so everything comes back to race. And so that's the problem about all of it.
Just a victim all the time. There's no way to escape victimhood.
Yep.
It is built in. You are a victim, and you'll always be a victim.
And by the way, Tug, it also basically teaches that people that do commit crime or do wrong by society, well, they didn't do it as an individual. That was just their relationship with the poor legal system.
The system that is stacked against them. No, I struggle to understand how anybody has this point of view that every day you're a victim, that you have no choice. The good Lord gives you free will, so you always have a choice, or at least from my point of view, you always have a choice. And that's the other thing. Like, instead of this stuff driving me absolutely mad, I understand it's part of a greater plan. It's part of the greater plan that the good book talks about. So that's the way that I find peace in all of this. Do I think it needs to be pointed out and uncovered and let people know, that shine the light on it, if you will? Absolutely, I do believe that. And this guy went on basically to say that the schools have no idea, and they're using it in Fulton County and in Cobb County.
So the public schools have the state funding, right? They do. So the state is basically paying for your curriculum without knowing what's in it. And they have no clue. And I'm like, this is great. This is good.
This is great. This is great. I love indoctrinating kindergartners, because you rightly pointed out, Rhino, is like he goes on in this video. We don't have the cut now, but he goes on to talk about how they started in kindergarten, because it's not like they're going to start it in 12th grade, right? That you're past. You're not getting those kids. Those are but when you start in kindergarten and you teach a kid from day one that you are bad, you are evil, or you are a victim, that sticks with you the rest of your life.
Yeah, and he talked about framing the curriculum as DEI is more accepted than like anti-racist education or critical race theory. The goal is to get these kids, these young kindergarteners, to influence their parents to make the ideological shift as well. So that's what he's trying to do, and that's what they are trying to do, is to go in, talk to these young kids, kindergarten and up, and let them know that their family and them are racist, and they need to stop it now, and they need to make a change. And that's what they're doing with this, when none of it is actually true. None of that has anything to do with a kid who is in kindergarten. A 6-year-old does not make a choice to be racist in any way whatsoever. Now, is there racism out there? Absolutely. Is it brought upon these children by their parents? Probably. There are awful people in this world that can't look at someone and see that they're just like them despite the color of their skin. So that is a problem, but that's a problem with the parents, not a problem with the schools, and not a problem with the child as they're grown. My child never noticed any difference, except, he did notice and said, I have a brown friend and I have a peach friend.
They're just observational.
Right. It was more observational, but they were friends, it didn't matter. They loved that person no matter what. Still to this day, they all go to school together because they've grown up in the same areas, and they don't notice that. The only time they notice it is when a teacher comes in and then tells my son that he suffers from white supremacy. He's like, I don't even understand what that means. What are you talking about? So the only time that this becomes top of mind is when an adult teaches them about it.
Well, if your goal, and if you think about doing this from, like, let's say the age, 6 to 14, is to explain to people that you're within a society that is unjust, then they're going to grow up more willing to tear it apart. And that's what it comes back to. That's the goal. That is always the goal, is that they are going to look at society as being wildly unjust, and that it's here's the machine and you can't do anything about it. That is the reason why they're more willing to tear down pillars of society. We saw this play out in the summer of 2020 with all these idiots out in the street. That's just part of what happens, and that is what you reap, what you sow when you keep teaching kids this BS.
They use this same tactic, these style tactics in China, in communist China, because of the same things that Los is describing. They want you to be indoctrinated. They want you to buy into whatever the message is. In China, it's communism. In this case, with the teaching lab, it's CRT. They want you to buy in. That way you turn into a product that they can program and have you either, act a certain way or, treat people a different way. It is all about the indoctrination, and that's the sad part about it. And, look, if you're listening to this and you have an issue with it, as you should reach out to the governor's office. You should reach out to your local representative. You should reach out to the Board of Education, the Georgia Board of Education. I mean, this dude was literally bragging about indoctrinating kids in kindergarten, and he should be held accountable for breaking the law in Georgia. Whatever he is guilty of, he should be held accountable. These kids are being indoctrinated, not educated, and that is unfair.
And he knows he's in trouble.
Yes.
He knows evil salesman. I mean, he even said it, and then he goes on to talk about the government and the Georgia state government having no clue, which you just heard, and saying this is great, this is good. Then he goes on and gets even deeper, and I've reached out to Governor Kemp, and obviously he's on his way back from Davos, but, hopefully we'll be able to talk to them soon, because Dr. Bostic went on to say Governor Kemp, is like such an idiot. Like, his wife does a lot of stuff on education. I can't even believe the way this guy talks, by the way. He writes curriculums, but that's besides this point. Right. His wife does a lot of stuff on education here in Georgia. I would get nailed if Governor Kemp's wife found out all of this. So he already understands, and he says, if they come for me and take my business license, I'll keep consulting. So he's not going to stop. He's going to continue to try to influence children.
No question about it. This is the Morning Extra on Extra 106.3. The app's the best way